everyone is here, let us start. My name is Nur Nadia and I will be moderating this webinar for today's session. First of all, I would like to welcome you all to this webinar, Web of Science. The highest appreciation is extended to the Honorable Professor Dr. Ismail Ahmad, Rector of UiTM Johor, Associate Professor Dr. Akmal Aini, Deputy Rector of Academic Affairs, Member of the State Executive Committee, Puan Mawar Nur binti Abdullah, Deputy Chief Librarian, Head of Program, Coordinator, Heads of Department, Lecturers, and all the attendees of the webinar today. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and good afternoon to all ladies and gentlemen. The purpose of this webinar is to encourage writing and publishing among staff. The Web of Science could then be used to provide skills, guidance, and techniques in finding sources of information materials, and the last objective is to improve the skills of UiTM Johor staff in obtaining relevant information effectively. Ladies and gentlemen, today we will have a knowledge sharing session from the Web of Science trainer. Before the presentation begins, please allow me to introduce the trainer for today's webinar. Ms. Cheng Julin is a Regional Solution Consultant. As Regional Solution Consultant specializing in scientific and scholarly research, Julin engaged with researchers and university leaders around Southeast Asia in discussions around optimizing researcher workflows, bibliometrics, and strategic decision-making. Julin has extensive experience in STM publishing, covering various research fields such as medical education, medical informatics, and evidence-based medicine. During her career, she represented leading academic publishers in engagements across Asia-Pacific. Juline's passion for marketing, client engagements, and academia, combined with her experience in different publishing houses, enables her to provide a unique blend of insights and stakeholder perspectives regarding academic research output and research evaluation. To all ladies and gentlemen, if you have any question for Ms. Juline, please add them in the chat space and we'll do our best to address them during the Q&A session later. Without further ado, I would like to welcome the presenter, Ms. Julin, to deliver her presentation. Alright, Miss, the floor is now yours.
Right, thank you. Thank you very much. A very good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone has had a good lunch, and I look forward to presenting today's session for you. So before I begin, let me just share my screen. So give me a few seconds, yeah? Okay. Can you confirm that you can see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. So very warm welcome again to everyone for today's session. I'll be presenting to you on two resources that you have access to at UiTM. So the first resource is the Web of Science, and then I will also explain about journal citation reports for you. Okay, today's session will be about an hour and a half, depending on the number of questions that come up from the audience. So if you have any questions, as what the host has mentioned, you can type those questions into the Q&A panel or the chat box. Okay, for me, I would prefer that you, if you have any questions, do type that in immediately so that we can address those questions while I'm presenting on some of these topics. Okay, because if we keep it to the end, what happens is that it might be a bit confusing to come back to what you were referring to for your question. Okay, so there's two options. Just remember, there is the Q&A panel and also the chat box. All right, so let's begin today's topic. So for today, I have a theme around what's on the screen. So it is time to get published. I think for many researchers or even postgraduate students at UiTM, this is ultimately your goal, to be published. Yeah, I think in order to graduate, that is also part of the process, right? So in order to graduate, you also need to publish a paper. So using the tools like Web of Science and Journal Citation Reports, how can they actually help you to achieve this goal? Okay. So to help guide us along today, I'm sharing with you on the screen a typical research workflow for a researcher. Okay, this is specific to a literature review, but also can be applied for original research. Okay, so why am I showing this research workflow to you? Not because I want to dictate how you want to do your work, but essentially these are the things that researchers have to do. Okay, in order to be able to publish a paper, you would probably have to go through each and every of these steps. Number one, which is the problem formulation. Okay, you need to know what are you going to research on. Even if it's a review paper, what is the question you want to answer? Okay, so problem formulation is key. And one tip that I wanted to share with all of you is if you are going to look to publish in a high impact journal, especially a journal that is in Q1 Web of Science, you need to have a research question that is appealing to these journals. So try and put yourself in the shoes of the journal. What will attract them? Okay. The topics that are mostly of interest to the top journals are usually breakthrough science. So anything that has a novel idea, novel breakthrough, something that addresses certain gaps in that research, in that specialization or that technology area, those are the key things that would be attractive to a high impact journal. Then once you have formulated that problem, the next thing is on literature searching. How would you then make sure that you cover all the bases? Okay? You might think that the question that you have is novel. However, through the literature research, a comprehensive literature search, okay, it could actually show you that perhaps that question had already been answered. Right? So literature searching is important and has to be done comprehensively. Okay? So once you've done your literature search and you've identified the gaps, you've identified that yes, your research question is sound, okay, the next thing is on collecting all the relevant data, do your experiments and so on, and compile your data. Data evaluation is key so that you are able to identify some trends. Trends, especially when you're doing research, literature reviews or writing a review paper. Because when you're writing a review paper, a lot of times you're inundated with a lot of papers and a lot of different findings. So ultimately, your review paper has to be able to uncover all the needed information so that you can make some analysis and further interpretation. And finally, once you have done all these above steps, okay, the next thing is about putting it into writing and publishing the paper. So the Web of Science and the Journal Citation Reports will be able to help you across all these different steps. Now let's start with problem formulation. How would you start to think about the research question that you want to answer? Okay. Many of you will start with a keyword search on, say, the internet. Yeah, everybody's good friend is Google, right? Including me. All right, but keyword searching is easy. However, it is not as robust as you might think. The reason is because when you're doing a keyword search, most of the time it's just identifying the occurrence of that keyword within the text of the papers or the content. Ultimately, when you're trying to find a research question, you need to also look at the relationship between different papers. Why did this paper cite the other paper and so on? Okay, so keyword searching is easy as a start. However, it should not be the end game. It should not be the only thing you use for literature searching or identifying key topics. What I'm going to recommend to you is to use something called the Citation Index database. So the Web of Science is a citation index database, and what we have on Web of Science is a comprehensive list of citations from documents that have been indexed in journals that are indexed in Web of Science. So what is a citation? A citation is a reference to other published materials. Okay, so if let's say paper A had cited paper B, it means that some of the findings from paper B was used in the writing of paper A. Right? So what does this mean to you? By exploring the citation network or citation index, you can easily find older and newer related papers. This is in the form of the exploration of a citation network. So what is a citation network? As its name suggests, it's a connection. It's a connection between different papers based on citations. So within Web of Science, there are a few ways where you can explore the records, okay? But I wanted to illustrate how the citation network happens. So on Web of Science, let's say you started off with a keyword search and you identified probably a few sets or a few publications that might be of interest to you. And you come across this 2012 paper and suddenly an idea came to your mind. So you might think, hey, this could become potentially your research question, something that you want to answer. But you need to be more comprehensive. You need to see what has happened before and what has happened after its publication. So from this 2012 paper, where would you find the older papers? Within the reference list. So if you're looking at the reference list of this 2012 document, you will be able to identify the older papers on the left, which is the blue color ones. So these are the older papers. Sorry. Then you have the newer papers. So it's good to find out about papers that have been published before 2012. But what happened after this research has been published? Has anything happened? Okay. So this is where you come and look at the time cited. So how many times has this research been cited in papers more recently published? Okay, so those papers in green, these are papers that are more recently published after 2012, and they have applied some form of findings from this 2012 paper. Okay? So now I've already shown you two ways. So from the reference list, you look at the older papers, and then from the time cited, you look at the newer publications. Now there is a third way, which is your related records. So how do we define the related records on Web of Science? If the papers share similar references, so they do not have to cite each other, as long as they have shared similar references, they will be classified as related records. Okay, we have also enhanced this portion with AI. So on Web of Science, if you're searching for a particular type of document, we will always recommend you similar content so that you can also explore those related papers. So I hope this explanation of how the citation network works is useful and you are able to understand. Okay? When is this exploration useful? Okay, it is useful in three cases. Number one, where keyword searching is not easy to define. So an example would be, say, especially like things like economics or business. When it comes to those subject areas that are quite vague, okay, keyword searching can be quite difficult to define. So when that happens, this kind of citation network exploration becomes useful, especially when you have already identified a specific paper that is on that specific topic that you are looking at. Now, the second use case is when older research needs to be traced. So if, for example, in the case, if you're a chemistry student, okay, day in, day out, you might be exposed to things like the different types of chemical compounds. Okay, what is the reason for looking at chemical compounds? It's to look at the application of that particular chemical compound. So imagine this: if you suddenly found this particular chemical compound interesting, it is very important for you to find out when exactly was it first discovered. When was the chemical compound first discovered? And from that originating paper, you can then trace to see how that chemical compound has been applied in, say, pharmaceutical ingredients, nutrition ingredients, and so on. All right, so that is one example. Then the third use case is when you need to see where the research trend leads. Okay, something similar to finding out its application. So what has happened? How has this technology been applied in society from day one, okay, until today? Right? So these are just some examples of when to use this citation network exploration. I hope this has helped you for now. If you have any questions, do feel free to remember to type those questions into the chat box or the Q&A panel. Okay, now a bit of afternoon trivia for all of you. Now I'm showing 3 pictures on the screen. Okay, you have sand, stars, and journals. Okay, I'll give you 3 seconds to think about what these 3 pictures have in common. Okay, 2, 3. Okay, now they all exist in overwhelming numbers. Some of you said small particles. I'm not sure about the journals. Journals aren't really small. Okay, but anyway, they all exist in overwhelming numbers. Okay, so we can't count sand, we can't count stars, neither can we count journals. Now I want you to think about your own specialization, the specialization you're in. How many journals are there in the world? Could be a few hundred, yeah? So what do you understand about journals? They are published in terms of volumes and issues. So within each volume, you could have multiple issues, and within those issues, you have multiple articles. So you multiply the number of articles to the number of issues for the number of journals that are out there. Can you imagine the amount of full text papers that there are for your own specialization alone? Okay, it could be tens of thousands. Now, the next question is, how much time do you actually have to read all these tens of thousands of papers? Right? So you can't really read every single paper. Okay? And that's the reason why I wanted to point you to Bradford's law. So Bradford's law was discovered in 1934, and his law states that a relatively small number of journals publish majority of significant scholarly results. Yeah. So ultimately, it's not about the number of journals that you are exposed to. It's not about the number of articles you're exposed to. It's the ability to identify those impactful ones for your research. That's where Web of Science core collection comes in. So when you're using the Web of Science, the core collection is the heart of the Web of Science platform. And this is a curated set, so in-house curated set of journals, conference proceedings, as well as books. On the Web of Science core collection, we currently cover around 21,000 journals, 200,000 conference records, and 100,000 books. Okay? And these are indexed across these few indexes that are in the purple circle. So we have the Science Citation Index Expanded, Social Science Citation Index, Arts and Humanities Citation Index, and Emerging Sources Citation Index. Now there are 4 journal indexes here under the Web of Science core collection. And we then have the conferences and the books. Okay, so depending on the subscription that UITM currently has, there is a potential for you to access back files all the way till 1900. Okay? So what is the Web of Science? I mentioned about the Citation Network, and that is essentially the what Web of Science is. It is a comprehensive index of citations. And within Web of Science itself, we provide high quality content because these content are curated based on very strict quality and impact criteria. We also include researchers' profiles. So if any researchers has actually published papers in Web of Science, we now have an author record that is available so that you can see a multi-dimensional view of the researcher. We also include workflow and analysis tools that will help you to manage and evaluate some of these data points. Okay? And very importantly, this is something that I will repeat over time, is our publisher neutrality. We are not a publisher. So when it comes to curating the content for Web of Science, it is based solely on the discretion of our editors and also based on our criteria set out for quality and impact. Besides this, in the environment of research today, there are a lot of open access content, and science is becoming more and more open. So with that, more and more open access journals do come up. So when it comes to open access journals, if those journals want to be indexed in Web of Science, they have to go through the same evaluation process as any other journal for Web of Science. Okay? It's the same set of criteria that will be used to judge an open access journal. So just to explain about the differences in the journal indexes, okay, because this is one of the main areas where a lot of researchers get a bit confused about the different indexes on Web of Science. So I'll spend some time to explain this process and the differences. So any journal that wants to be indexed in Web of Science core collection has to go through an evaluation process. It starts with an evaluation of the quality criteria. If the journals fulfill our 24 quality criteria, they will be indexed in our Emerging Sources Citation Index. Now, the Emerging Sources Citation Index contains journals across all disciplines. And one thing to note, journals in this index do not have a journal impact factor. Okay? Once the journal has been able to be in ESCI for probably a few years and gained enough citations for their papers, they might be able to fulfill an additional 4 more impact criteria. So if those journals fulfill both our quality and impact criteria, which is a total of 28 criteria, they will be indexed in our flagship specialized collections, which is the Science Citation Index Expanded, Social Science Citation Index, and the Arts and Humanities Citation Index. Okay. Now I see somebody, Dr. Muslim, you asked to elaborate the 28 criteria. Okay. The 28 criteria will come up in the section on journal citation reports, so I'll elaborate on that there. Alternatively, if you are a journal editor and you're keen to find out in detail about each of these criteria, we do have a webinar coming up for editors towards the end of the month. I'll be happy to share that information with all of you after today. Okay. So back to the flagship specialized collections. Now, out of these 3 specialized collections, only the Science and the Social Science Citation Index journals will have a journal impact factor. Okay, I repeat. Only the Science Citation Index Expanded and the Social Science Citation Index journals will have a journal impact factor. Okay, so just take note of the difference. ESCI journals have met 24 quality criteria. These in dark purple have fulfilled our 28 criteria in total, but only the Science and the Social Science Citation Index journals will have a journal impact factor. Okay, let's go into the analysis. Okay, so earlier on, I was talking about formulating a problem. So I explained about the citation network and how you can use the citation network to explore the data, explore the information, find the relevant research. Okay? Now, once you have found that topic that you want to work on and you search through Web of Science for all the literature that you want on that particular topic, you need to do some kind of data evaluation. So on Web of Science itself, we have a few features which you can use to do just that. Okay? On the screen here, I have 2 such features. Okay? First feature is your Analyze Results feature, where you are able to analyze your search results in more details. So let's say, for example, in this screenshot here, I have searched for probably nuclear physics, okay? And I came up with 13,945 publications around this topic itself. Now, the first option to analyze is the Web of Science categories. So on Web of Science, the journals are classified into Web of Science subject categories, and there are 254 of them. So depending on the search term that you've used, those topics can also be applied across various other categories. So what is useful about this exploration is that sometimes it might uncover interesting applications. So let's say, for example, you were searching for quantum physics, okay? And suddenly something came up about economics. Okay? It doesn't quite gel, right? So you could drill deeper into those papers that mentioned on economics related to quantum physics, just to see why was there a mention of that. Okay? So by uncovering that area, you can see alternative ways of application of a particular technology. Another example is things like, for example, here, optics. So what are these, the 359 optics papers? How has it been applied in quantum physics? What's the relevance? So you can drill deeper into these 359 papers to find out. Now, the other things that you can analyze are all here, which I will go into detail as I go through the walkthrough for Web of Science. Okay, but as an overview, you could look at things like who are your authors in this area of research, so who is publishing this area of research, which are the organizations or institutions publishing this area of research. You could also be looking at publication titles. So if you are doing quantum physics, where can you publish? Which are the journals that are publishing this area of research? Other things like the publishers, the funding agencies, open access, even countries, all these can be analyzed. Now, the other feature that we have is the citation reports feature. Now, this particular feature is very useful, especially when you're looking to apply for, say, a grant. Okay, if you're looking to apply for a grant, a lot of times you need to justify whether that topic that you are going to do is something still relevant to the community. Okay, so by searching through all these papers on Web of Science, you can click on citation reports to see whether the publication is increasing over time or not. Now, here's some background noise. Do remember to mute your lines, otherwise we'll be recording all your background sounds. All right. Okay, so back to the citation report. The other thing that you can use this citation report for is if you're searching for your own publications. So say, for example, you search for UITM papers and you want to know the citation counts for all of UITM papers over time. Okay? You can do so with the citation report. Now, we also have these other features. Okay, so the first feature here on the left, the highly cited and hot papers, this is something that you will see when I go through my walkthrough. However, this is not applicable for UITM currently. Okay, so for UITM, you currently are not able to see these filters, which is the highly cited papers and hot papers filter. These two filters will only appear when you have a subscription to Insights Benchmarking and Analytics, which is our analytical tool. All right. So just take note, but I'll be explaining what these are for you, just for your interest. Okay, I'm still hearing some background noise. Please mute your lines so that we don't record any unnecessary background sounds into the recording. Otherwise, everyone will be hearing what's happening at your house or in your office. All right. So thank you very much. Okay. So what are these two filters? So the first filter is your highly cited papers. So the highly cited papers are papers that have been published in the past 10 years that have enough citations to put them in the top 1% of their field. Okay, so why is this important? Highly cited papers is how we actually determine who are the highly cited researchers annually. Okay, so some of you might have heard of the Highly Cited Researchers Award that we have every year. So this is how we determine. So based on the number of highly cited papers that they have, together with some other methodology. Now, the highly cited papers are useful for you to filter out those that are very important papers to read. Okay? Now, the next one is your hot papers. Hot papers filter are for those that are published more recently, so in the more recent 2 years, and they have enough citations to put them in the top 0.1% of their academic field. So what does this mean? These are hot and trending papers. So if you're looking to find out what is emerging and what is trending, this is one of the filters that you should be using. So identifying what is hot papers. Now, of course, without these two filters, you can still use a few of the sort functionalities to identify important papers. So on Web of Science, in the search results, there will be a way for you to sort the results based on date, citation count, as well as usage. So the usage count last 180 days is one of the useful sort functionalities to identify which are the more read content in the past 6 months. Okay? So these are based on usage, and usage is based on whether anyone has clicked on full text or added it to their EndNote, for example. Okay? Now, some of you would ask me, it's good that you have your citations and so on and the citation network, but I want to get access to the full text. Is that possible? On Web of Science, we provide links to the full text direct to the publisher's website. So, and also, if you are able to install a EndNote Click, okay, so EndNote Click is a free to install browser plugin. So you can install EndNote Click onto your computer, your browser, and it will work in the background to search for available full text. If it has found that a full text PDF is available, you will see this link, View PDF with EndNote Click. When you see this, you can just click on that link and immediately you will get the full text PDF. Okay, there's a question on the highly cited and hot papers. Can the librarian request data from Web of Science? This will be addressed on a case-by-case basis, and usually if a data is required, then there could be a nominal fee involved with the bulk custom data. Okay, so just take note of that. Okay, then we also have the open access status for the content. So if in the event that you want to perhaps look at what's available freely, you can actually use these filters on Web of Science to filter out the free to access and free to read publications. Okay. Now, there are also personalization tools that are available. So all users of Web of Science are able to register for their own login. Okay, you can register for your own login for Web of Science after you've signed in through UITM Library's website. So just sign in, access Web of Science, and then do a registration. You will be able to register for your own ID and password. With that ID and password, there are a few personalization tools that you could use. So you could manage your results by using this feature called marked list. Okay, so we understand that sometimes when you're searching for content, one search is not enough. It could require multiple searches. So when that happens, sometimes it's hard to combine all these different lists together. So what we have is called the marked list. So as you're searching through Web of Science, you come across content that you want to keep and bookmark. You can do so by adding them to a marked list. Okay? So you can store up to 50 marked lists. And within each of these marked lists, you can save up to 50,000 records per list. And once you have saved this list, remember the features that I was mentioning to you at the beginning, things like analyzed results and citation reports, these are still available for this marked list. Okay. Then some of you would also ask, is it possible to export this to EndNote? Yes, you can. So when you're exporting this to EndNote, there's a few options. There's EndNote Online and EndNote Desktop. So if you're using the desktop version, just by clicking EndNote Desktop, it will export it to your EndNote. Okay. If you're using other reference management software, any data that you want to export can be exported in RIS. So other RIS file versions are available. Okay, so I will now take you through the live platform so that I can show you around and also give you a closer look at some of the features that I've just explained. Okay, in the meantime, do type any questions you have in the chat box or in the Q&A. Yeah. Okay, so to access Web of Science, you would go through the UITM Libraries website. So do reach out to your librarian to find out how to access directly. Okay, if you're off campus, I believe UITM should have an off-campus access. So do reach out to them. Okay. Alternatively, if you happen to be on the campus and you go into Web of Science, just go into the top right-hand corner here, and that's where you would see the registration link. You can register for your own ID and password, and you can use that to do roaming as well. So that means if you're at home, you go to Web of Science, you can just log in directly. The roaming access will last you about 6 months. Okay. All right, so as a first-time user, there's a few key things that you can take note of. The first one is our resource center. So on the bottom right, there is a question mark. So this is our resource center where you'll be able to find things like product updates, guided tours, training. So we have some online courses available that you can take at your own time. And there are some news and events that are up and coming. If you need any help, so if you have any access issues or you have questions on why certain functions are perhaps not working as you expected, you can always contact us from here. So you can submit an inquiry. If you come across a article that has a wrong author name, so let's say you're the author of that paper and you know that that particular paper has spelled your name wrongly or the title has been incorrectly written, all these data corrections can also be submitted through this portal. Okay. If you have any features that you want to suggest to us, feel free to do so from this Suggest a Feature. Okay. There is a feedback portal that gives you an idea of what are the other features that have been requested by other users, and you can actually vote to let us know which are those features that you yourself think is important as well. So by giving your votes, it will help us to prioritize in terms of which are the features that should be improved first. Okay. Now for today's walkthrough, I will be doing a few things. So I'll start by showing you how you can search through the Web of Science platform. Subsequently, I'll also explain about the advanced search. I'll explain a little bit about cited reference search and structure search as well. And finally, go through the researcher searching. Towards the end, I will also show you some of the personalization features before bringing you into journal citation reports. Okay, so let's start with a document search. So let's say, for example, you are a researcher and you want to now do a quick search on a specific topic. Searching on Web of Science is fairly simple and straightforward. So you can choose the fields that you want to search in, or you can just search all fields. Okay? But for a topic, I will always recommend you to choose topic search because this will search the keyword within the title, the abstract, and the author keywords. Okay? So for topic search, I'm going to start with a search on, say, hydrogen energy. Okay? And do a search. And you would see that there's a huge number. So 235,323 results. And as you can imagine, it's impossible to read through everything. How else can you narrow this search down? Okay, there's a few ways. There is a search within the results. So let's say, for example, under hydrogen energy, you want to search for the storage, specific to storage. So you can search for the term again within this set of results, and it would drop this down to 29,000. Again, this number would be quite big, but it could be a starting point, right? So you can then use things like the sort functionality to identify the most important papers based on citations. So you can sort this by citations highest first. Okay, and you can see these are the top papers with the citations, highest citations. Right. You could also sort this by usage count, last 180 days. So you can go to the sort by and choose last 180 days, and you can see some of these papers. Okay. Then if you want to use any of these filters on the left, you can also do so. So you could use perhaps the application of this in only material science. Then you can refine this, and this has then limited down to the 7,500 papers. Okay. So with this set of results, you can now do some analysis. Okay. You may also like section. So this is where I mentioned about the AI working to give you some recommended list based on what you have just searched for. Okay. Now you can click on Analyze Results, and this would show you these information like the Web of Science categories that this 7,500 publications fall under. Okay. By looking at this list of records, you can then see, there were 1,507 in energy and fuels. Perhaps you want to look closer at this. And you select this and refine results by selected. Okay. Now, if you are looking for a collaborator, so let's say you are looking for a collaborator in this area, you can start by looking at things like countries. So there's a countries option here. So these are the countries that publish on this area of research. You can drill into view the records for those specific countries as well. If you are looking for, say, institutions to collaborate with, you can choose affiliations, and these would be the institutions that are publishing this area of research. Okay. If you're looking for specific authors, you can click on authors, and these would be the potential authors. But of course, without context of where they are from, it gets a bit difficult. So what happens is that I always recommend you to start from either affiliations or countries before you drill into the authors. Okay. If you want to know which are the funding agencies that are funding this area of research, you can select funding agencies. And this gives you an idea of who potentially could fund your research. Okay. Let's go back to the search results. Okay. The other feature is the Citation Reports feature. So you can click on Citation Report. And this would show you the full citation report over the years of the publications in this area of research. You can also see the individual publications and the citations for each year. Okay. So this data can also be exported. So you can download the graph, or you can export the full report. Okay. If you want to create an alert, you can do so. So you can create an alert for any new citations that come in for this particular search. Now we go back to the search result again. From here, you can also create an alert. So whenever there's a new publication specific to this topic that you have searched, you will be alerted to that new publication. Okay. If you want to limit this to open access content, the filters are here. So there's a quick filter for open access right here. And as I mentioned, if you want to install the EndNote Click, which helps you to retrieve full text, then go to Products and go to EndNote Click. And then you follow that registration steps and you'll be able to start using EndNote. Okay. So let's have a quick look and see. Okay. So because I've already installed EndNote Click here, you should be able to see some of these links. So this ... is EndNote Click working. Okay, so if there's any free full text, it will show up. So let me see whether anything has happened. Okay, so this, for example, so this one would say that there's a view PDF with EndNote click. So if there's a full text available, this is clickable. So you can click view PDF with EndNote click, and it will open up this full text PDF for you. Okay, so this is the PDF. All right, and then you can save this to your PC or share it to your EndNote. Now, the next part is about exploring the citation network. So let's say you are keen to find out about this: materials for hydrogen-based energy storage, past, recent progress, and future outlook. This sounds like a promising article to look at. So let's click through to this record. From this, you can see the details about this article, from its abstract to keywords used by the author and Keywords Plus. Now, Keywords Plus is something that is unique to Web of Science, where we will suggest additional keywords that you can use to find specific papers around this topic. Okay? You can also see the full list of authors, as well as the corresponding address and corresponding emails, so that in the event that you want to collaborate with this researcher or you want to reach out to them, you can do so immediately. Okay? If there's any funding provided, the funding details will be mentioned here. And if there was any grant amount provided, we have now substantiate that details here on the funding details. And if you want to know which journal it is published in, the journal information will also be on the record. And you can see its journal impact factor right there. Now, under the cited references, so the references that have been used by these articles, the full list will be here. So we are the most comprehensive in indexing the full list of references. So every single reference will be here, and you can see its corresponding citation counts as well. So from here, you can immediately see which are the most influential references in this article. If you come across this like not available, what this essentially means is that it is not indexed in Web of Science. All right, so that's why there's no link available. Okay, but the others here, as long as you see a link, that is the record and it is indexed in Web of Science. And you can see EndNote click is also working in the reference list to ensure that you can retrieve the full text when you need it. Now, to explore the citation network further, you can explore this on the right-hand side. So the reference list I showed you earlier are to the older papers. The newer papers will be here under citations. So you want to know what has happened after this paper has been published in 2020. Okay, and if you click on 211, these are the newer papers, and you can continue to do further analysis or even run citation reports. Right? Now, all of you seem very quiet. I don't see any new questions under the chat, or neither do I see any questions in Q&A. This is your chance to actually clarify any questions you might have for Web of Science. So do take this opportunity to ask as much questions as you can. Okay. Now, I've shown you how to search for the topic. The next thing that I would share with you is the affiliation search. Okay, so in the event that you are keen to find out about UITM's publications, you can use the affiliation search and look for technology Mara. So you have University Technology Mara here, and this is a unified name for UITM. Okay, so this will include all the different variants in names for UITM, and you can see which variants are included by clicking on this index. So if you click on that index and you search for technology Mara, fine. So this is the one, and you can click on details. you can see these are all the name variants for UITM. So some of you have published as each of these different names. Okay, so what we've done is we've unified all of them together so that you're able to see a very clean list of UITM's papers. Okay, so if you're searching for UITM's papers here, just search for the name. For the librarians, you might be keen to extract some of this data for reporting purposes. So if you want to, you can add a date range. So you can add either publication year or index date. Okay, there's a difference between publication date and index date. So publication date would mean that the article was published on that specific date. Index date, this refers to the date when the articles have been indexed in Web of Science. Okay. Okay, so if you want to include a publication date, you can do so by custom. So if you want a specific year, just use 2021 01-01 2021 231 and do a search. So for 1 year, okay, in 2021, UITM has 1,501 publications. Okay. So there's a few questions that came in. Okay, how long is it to take for an article to be indexed in Web of Science? It depends on how quickly the content is provided to us by the publisher. Okay, usually we have an update process on a daily process. So on a daily process, new papers do get indexed into our Web of Science. Okay. Then there's a question in the Q&A. Hi, how can I know list of journals under Web of Science by ranking of Q1 to Q4? That's an excellent question, which I will answer in my the second half of today's session, which is on journal citation reports. Okay. All right, so let's come back to this. Okay, so I've shown you how to extract the data for UITM. Again, if you want the citation counts for UITM papers in 2021, you can just click on Citation Reports and that should show you. Okay, so if you click on Citation Reports, this will show your citation counts. Another tip that I have for you for finding collaborators is if you are looking, you could use the citing articles as an opportunity to reach out to collaborators because these are articles that have cited UITM. Okay, so by reaching out to these, by looking at these articles, where they are from, okay, you can click on Analyze. You can see which affiliations have cited your work. So UPM has cited your work, UKM, King South. Okay, so all these are your potential collaborators because they've somehow also cited UITM's publications. Okay. Okay, so let's see. Okay, now the next part is on advanced search. Now we have improved on our advanced search functionality. Okay, we understand that a lot of researchers nowadays are not familiar with Boolean searching, but they want to know how to do more complex searches. So on advanced search, you can build on that search query, okay, by including any of these fields here. So let's look at, I would search for this one, cancer or tumor. Okay, let's find something else. Let's try marine biology. Then we can add this topic to the query. Then if there's an affiliation that you want to include as well, you can choose affiliation and perhaps you could put Ojimara. Okay, you can use the connector and or not. So you can say and then you add to the query. Then this becomes your search. Okay. Alternatively, in the previous search that you have done in this session, you can actually add that as well. So if you want to include this, just click Add to Query, and there will be a connector. Okay. Hey, there's a quick question here. What's the difference between authors keywords and keywords plus? Okay, I think earlier on I mentioned, so authors keywords are keywords that have been provided by the author to the journal. So that means it's part of the process of sending in their article. Keywords Plus is proprietary to Web of Science, where we have looked at all the different papers that have been indexed and collected this based on an AI to look at commonly occurred keywords amongst those articles. So that is Keywords Plus. Okay. Okay. Now, another question, by using this filtering method, it really narrowed down to the most relevant topic or research paper. Is it suitable for conducting systematic literature review paper? Yes, quite possible. So a lot of researchers are also using this method of searching to narrow down for literature, systematic literature review papers. Sometimes they just limit it to open access content. Sometimes they want to review things like which are the countries around the world that are publishing this area of research. All this becomes relevant when you're doing a systematic review paper, right? All right, so let's do this search that I just built. Okay, click search. Okay, there was one paper from UITM that was publishing on marine biology. Then let's say you want to copy this, you want to share this particular result with your colleagues. You can do so to copy the query link, and you can put that into the chat box, which I will do so now. And for anyone who's clicking on that link, you'll be prompted to log into Web of Science, and you would see this exact search that I've just done. Okay. All right, so that's advanced search. Let's look at the other search functionalities. I also saw another question that came in the Q&A. Hi, how to find publishers by countries? That's a very good question. So on Web of Science, you will be able to look at publisher, however, not based on the country. Okay, if you want to find a list of publishers by country, you could use journal citation reports to a certain extent, but yeah, the systems are not built to look at publishers per se, so that's why there's no direct filter for that. Okay, if you could elaborate on why you need to find publishers by country, that would be good. Alternatively, most researchers would tend to look at journals by country rather than publishers by country. So journals by country can be easily retrieved from journal citation reports, and I'll show that to you later on. Okay, now these two other searches I'll touch on briefly. So for cited reference search, this is where you're searching the reference list of those articles indexed in Web of Science. Okay, so just imagine the reference lists do not have all the papers that are indexed in Web of Science, remember? But sometimes you want to find out whether any of those works have been mentioned in the works in Web of Science. So one such example is things like the Bible. Okay, so the Bible is not indexed by Web of Science, so we do not index the Bible. However, sometimes you might want to see when the Bible has been mentioned in the reference of those papers. So under cited work, you can do a quick search on Bible, see the results, and then you see the results. Then these are the articles that have cited the Bible in their reference list. Okay, so this is the cited reference search. Okay. Now, the other search called structure search, as its name suggests, it is a search for the chemical structure. I'm not going to show you the structure drawing, but I'm going to search by chemical compound. So I'm going to search this chemical compound called epoximycin and search. And if the chemical compound is available, it will show here. And then you can view the reaction details, and a link to the publication will be there. Okay. Now, the final thing I will show you on Web of Science will be the researcher search. Okay, so for those of you who have already published papers on Web of Science, I highly encourage you to claim your publications and your own author record. So let's look at a researcher search. I have here a sample of a Malaysian researcher. So this is Professor Lam's profile on Web of Science. He is from UMT. So I'm doing a search on him. And this is his claimed record. So it would include his Web of Science Researcher ID, his affiliation, his past organizations, any awards that he has received as a peer reviewer. If he has an ORCID ID and he have indicated it, then it will also include here. The full list of all his publications will be here, and there's a way to toggle those that are not indexed in Web of Science core collection. So if you see here, 287 publications are indexed in Web of Science, 7 are not. Okay, so if you want to see what are the 7, you can click on that and it will appear in that list. Okay. Now, once you have claimed that this author record for yourself and you include peer review information, so that means if you've peer reviewed for any journal, then these details will be shown on the peer review tab. Okay, so which are the journals you've reviewed for? Are you part of any editorial board? Okay. On the right-hand side, there will be some metrics specific to the author. So we have the H index based on Web of Science, his total publications, time cited, peer review metrics. We also have the author impact beam plot summary. Now, this is a summary of his performance of all his papers. Okay, so how we do this is based on the citation counts. So we plot the citation counts according to how well it performs in that particular research area. Okay, so let's say, for example, for Prof. Lam, his overall performance is at the 85th percentile. So if you take all the publications in, say, engineering, his field is in chemical engineering, you take all the papers in chemical engineering and you plot all his publications according to that, okay, his performance for all his papers has always been around 85%, 85th percentile. Okay, so 100 is the best. If you want a detailed breakdown of his individual year's performance, there is a dashboard and you can see his 10-year impact beam plot. So each year's publications, how has he done? So you can see this particular paper published in 2015 has put him in the 98th percentile in that year. Okay, and you can also look at his full career to see how well he has done so far. Okay. So let's go back. So how do you claim your profile? Okay, it's very simple. You do a quick author search of your name. So let me clear this. If there's anyone who wants to volunteer your name, you can do so. Otherwise, Dr. Muslim Ismail, I might just use you as an example if you don't mind. Okay. I hope this was your published name. Otherwise, let me see whether. Okay. Oh, don't have. Okay, so if there's an alternative published name that you have, do let me know. Otherwise, okay. Abriza, try Abriza. Okay, so last name Abdullah. And then Abriza. Okay, so we can search for your name. So this is the, is this just the professor you're referring to? Okay, so yeah. So Prof. Abriza, yes, I met her a few times already. She's from UM. Okay, so this is her details. And she's from UM. Her past affiliations are here. Okay, and these are all her publications. Okay, so this is already a claim profile, so I can't demonstrate to you. But in the event that it has not been claimed, there will be no green tick. Okay, so then there will be, instead of this go to author search, there will be a button called claim this profile or claim this record. Okay, so let's try, I'll try and find another one just as an example. Okay, I'll just search for this one. Okay, so let's say, for example, this Okay, so let's say this is me. If I go into this particular record, okay, and I want to claim this record, just go to click claim my record. So click on that, proceed to claim. All right, and then if you have a Publons profile, then just log in to Publons. If you don't have a Publons profile, just register for one right here. Okay, so once you are logged in, let me just demonstrate to you very quickly. Okay, so this is my dashboard on Publons. The papers that were from this profile gets ported into Publons. And once I verify that these are my papers, I select them and click submit. So now this step is very, very important. Make sure you are selecting only the articles that are your papers. Okay, so don't blindly just select everything and click submit, because that could cause errors. Okay, so make sure you look through the list and select only the papers that are yours. Okay, so I will not do this because I don't want to add these papers because they're not mine. All right. If you want to add non-Web of Science publications, you can go to publications here on the left. Okay, and then you click on import publications. Okay, and you can include this based on DOI or the article title. Okay, so this is how you would start to maintain your profile. So there is a public profile which is on Publons, and there is a profile here that is on Web of Science that sits behind a access. Okay. Now for the other features here, like mark list, these are the list that you can start saving. So in the event that you were searching for something and you want to save this to your mark list, do remember to register for your own ID and password first. And select this article and add to mark list. So you can add this to the unfiled list, or which is this 3,465 that I have. Or if you have previously created some lists, you can save it to those lists as well. Okay. Now, as the name suggests, the histories and alerts are where you would retrieve things like your saved alerts and your history, your search history. All right. So I'm going to take a few seconds to have a drink of water. So while I'm doing that, if you have any questions on Web of Science, do type those questions in at this time. Okay, before we begin on the second segment, which is on journal citation reports. Okay. Okay, I think there's one question here. I have two ID numbers where when I search my name, starting with the first name and followed by the second name, and change it to second first, okay, results will be different. How to solve this problem? I think I will need you to reach out to me. So do drop me an email after today's session, and I'll have a look. So give me the two ID numbers that you have. I'll have a quick check and also see whether we can combine that together. Okay. So yeah, just reach out to me separately offline. Yeah. Okay, so for the next segment, I think this would help to answer the two questions that are in the Q&A panel. Is one thing about identifying journals in Q1 to Q4 and also by publishers by countries. Okay, so before I go in there, I just wanted to share some statistics with all of you. Okay, there is an ever-growing scholarly publishing landscape, and these are the numbers. Okay, so on an annual basis, almost 3 million papers are published. And there are currently, since 2018 actually, close to 42,500 journals. Okay. In terms of open access content, we're talking about 14,785 open access journals that are listed on DOAJ. based on the 2020 report. Now, with coming with open access, there is also more and more predatory journals. Predatory journals are those that prey on researchers, where they could potentially be fake journals that only want to receive the article processing fees from you and publish without peer review. Okay? So because of all these challenging landscapes, it's very important for researchers to know how to identify suitable journals and trustworthy journals to publish in. So I'm going to share with you a simple checklist that you can utilize to screen for predatory journals. Okay. So earlier on, at the beginning, we were talking about Web of Science. I showed you how you could identify your research topic. You can analyze the data, and now you're ready to publish. But first, before you send your articles to any of these journals, screen them, check whether they are trustworthy or not. Okay. I cannot repeat this enough, because as researchers, you have committed almost 6 months to a year to your research paper. It is your blood, sweat, and tears. Okay, so if you had, in the event that you publish in a predatory journal, chances are there is no law to say that they are doing something illegal. So what happens is that your research goes down the drain and you can't be recognized for the work that you have done at your institution. Okay, so this is very, very important for researchers. Okay, so what are some of the simple checklists that you can do? Okay, okay. So number one, do you or your colleagues know the journal? Okay, it sounds very simple, but a lot of times nobody goes and checks with their colleagues. Okay, check with them whether they know that journal that you are trying to publish in. Okay. Can you easily identify and contact those publishers? Is the journal clear about the type of peer review it uses? So there are many different types of peer review. You have open, single blind, double blind, and nowadays we have more open peer review. Okay. Are articles indexed in services that you use? So are they indexed in things like Web of Science? Okay, I'm not talking about Google, okay, because Google indexes everything, including predatory journals. Right? So be careful. Is it clear what fees will be charged? Okay? Fees are very important, especially when it comes to open access journals. So usually open access journals will require you to pay an article processing charge. Make sure that they have clearly stated what's the amount and when those fees will be collected. Okay? If there's any color fees that they things like color processing fees or whatsoever, or additional fees that they want to collect from you, they have to be clear and explain what these fees are for. Then this is very important. Do you recognize the editorial board? Okay, it sounds like something that is very common sense, because if the journal declares that they have these editorial board members, it should be true. Yeah, but a lot of times predatory journals prey on the unknowingness of early career researchers. So if in the event that you go in, have a quick look at the editorial team, editorial board members. Okay, sometimes they will try and put in things like Nobel laureates or high-flying researchers in the area, just to attract some of these researchers. Okay, but do verify and check backwards. So that means search for that researcher. Is that researcher truly from that institution? Did that researcher actually declare that yes, they are part of the editorial board of that particular journal? So all these needs to be verified. Then, is the publisher a member of a recognized industry initiative? So are they part of the Committee on Publication Ethics, COPE? And also, are they listed in the Directory of Open Access Journals, DOAJ? Okay, so these are just some of the common checklists that you should be looking at. Now, earlier on, there was a question on our criterias. Okay, so these are our 24 quality criterias and 4 impact criterias. And why am I showing you this now? The reason is because the checklist that I showed you earlier on is essentially a few of these criteria already. So on Web of Science, when the journals are going through an evaluation, we already cross-check all these data. Things like who is the publisher, is there a presence of peer review policy, is there a presence of ethics statement, who are the editorial affiliations, author affiliations, editorial board compositions. All these details will be verified in that evaluation process. So can you imagine the journals that have already been indexed in Web of Science have already gone through this process of quality checks? So as a researcher, you can trust the list within Web of Science. Okay. So that's how you should start to monitor whether a journal is trustworthy or of quality. Okay, so make sure that you do those checks before you publish. Okay. Now, the next part, I'm going to share with you a few strategies for publishing. Okay, I know there are varied experiences within the group today. So some of you are early career researchers, some of you are professors already and in faculty. Okay, some of these strategies can be applied for all of you. Okay, so for early career researchers who are just starting out, who have never published before, sometimes it is quite scary to publish. So one of the strategies I always recommend is that perhaps you want to look at the journals that are already accredited by your local government agencies. So one example is Masa. So Mohi actually does curate their own citation index, and you can look at those journals that are indexed there. The other option that you have is to look for internationally recognized journals. And these come in the form of those journals that are indexed in Web of Science and JCR. Now, if you want more challenge, especially for those that are in faculty, there could be a recognition. You could look for some recognition by publishing in higher ranking and prestigious journals. Okay, so then you would look for journals that are in quartile 1 to quartile 4 in terms of journal impact factor on journal citation reports. Okay. So these three are the main strategies that you could apply depending on your experience in publishing so far. Okay. Now the fourth and fifth strategy that I want to share with you today is to think about journals that get cited very quickly. So from the perspective of a postgraduate student, you have a limited time within the university. Okay, so you might not have more than 3 years in the university, and within that 3 years, you want to be published. So can you imagine, after publishing, if you get your first citation within before you graduate, do you think that's a good thing for your CV? Very good, right? So at least you already got recognized before you even graduated. Right? So, but in order to get this information, it is very difficult for many researchers because it requires a lot of data churning. Okay? So on journal citation reports, because on Web of Science, we track when citations come in for documents. So we are able to calculate how quickly articles get cited within a specific journal. So there is a metric that we have on journal citation reports called Immediacy Index. And this index is useful to identify potentially what are your chances of getting your first citations in the first year of publication. Okay? So later on, I'll explain a bit more about this index. The final strategy is on finding journals that get cited for a long time. So this is especially useful for those that are in faculty. Okay, you want to be able to ensure longevity in your citations. So you continue to receive citations over time. Right? So to identify these journals, you can use this metric called Cited Half-Life. Okay, Cited Half-Life is nothing to do with nuclear energy, yeah? Okay, but it is talking about the potential, how long can the content in that particular journal get cited, right? So I'll share a little bit more of where you can find each of these indicators. Now, what's the difference between journal citation reports and Web of Science? Okay, so the content in journal citation reports, the journals list comes from Web of Science. And the way that we select and index the journals in journal citation reports is the same way that we index the journals in Web of Science. Okay? However, on the journal citation reports, we give you added indicators. So these are journal-specific indicators which you can utilize to make further evaluations of the publication before you send your manuscript to that publisher. Okay? We also have quality checks in place for journals that have a journal impact factor. Okay? So any journal that is indexed in Web of Science, they don't just stay there. Right? They have to continuously maintain the quality standards and the impact standards that we have set out. If they don't meet any of them in the subsequent year, there's a high chance that it could be removed from the list. Okay. Now, for those of you who have used Journal Citations Report before, okay, last year was a very exciting year because we have included more content. So where did this more content come from? In the past, journal citation reports only included journals from Science Citation Index Expanded and Social Science Citation Index. Okay, so those are the journals that have a journal impact factor, and we only covered that in the old journal citation reports. Now, with this new journal citation reports moving forward, we are now covering AHCI and ESCI journals. So Arts and Humanities Citation Index and Emerging Sources Citation Index journals are included into the journal citation reports. But I need to emphasize, it does not mean that AHCI and ESCI journals get a journal impact factor. Okay? So AHCI, ESCI, still no impact factor. Only SCIE and ESCI. SCIE and SSCI, right? But these two other indexes, which is the Arts and Humanities and the Emerging Sources Citation Index, these journals get the other indicators. So you will be able to see the other journal-related indicators except the journal impact factor. Okay? Yeah, so can you give example of journals that have been removed from Web of Science and why? Yes, I'll share that with you later on when I show you the suppression list. Okay. Now, we also included a new indicator. So for the AHCI and ESCI journals, they are given a new indicator called Journal Citation Indicator. Okay. So instead of the journal impact factor, you can also now look at Journal Citation Indicator. Okay. I'll explain more about this new indicator shortly. So as I mentioned, the content is expanded. So now within JCR, you see almost 21,000 journals. And I will stress this again, AHCI and ESCI journals will not be awarded a journal impact factor, but they will receive a new metric called the Journal Citation Indicator. Okay? Now for the AHCI and ESCI journals, as I mentioned, they will get all these other indicators except the journal impact factor. So how does these various indicators work? I will explain to you a few that I have mentioned in the strategy. Okay, so journal citation indicator is a way to show the impact of the articles that are published by that journal. Okay, so I'll explain that later on. But earlier on in my slide, I mentioned about immediacy index. So immediacy index is how quickly you can potentially get a citation in the first year of publication. Okay, so immediacy index, you can see 1.015. This would mean that any number above 1 means that you have a good probability of getting one citation in your first year of publication. Any number below 1, then you have a less than 100% chance of getting one citation in the first year of publication. For this other one, which is the cited half-life, so cited half-life is here. It's measured by number of years. So in this case, it is talking about 10 years. So for articles published in this journal, they do receive citations up to 10 years of publication. Okay. So this is how you would read these indicators. For details about the other indicators here, you could refer to the details in the journal citation reports itself, because we will explain the calculation and also the definition of each of these indicators. Now, for details about the journal citation indicator, okay, this indicator is new and it is very easy to read. Okay, so for those of you who are familiar with Insights, okay, for Insights, which is our benchmarking and analytics tool, we have this indicator called Category Normalized Citation Impact, where we take the citations of that paper and measure it against the expected citation in that category. So for CNCI, any number 1, that means CNCI of 1 is always the global average. In this case, what we've done is we've taken the CNCI of every single article published in that journal over 3 years. Okay, so for the past 3 years, for all the articles, we will take their citations and calculate the CNCI. We will average out the CNCI for all the articles and reviews, and that becomes their journal citation indicator. So any number that is below 1 would mean that the journal is performing below global average. Any number above 1 would mean that it is performing above global average. Okay, so this is how you will read this particular indicator. Now, what's the difference between the journal impact factor and the journal citation indicator? Now, the journal impact factor is a journal level metric, meaning that it's calculated on a journal level. So the impact factor is calculated based on citations of 1 year only, which is to 2020, to the content that has been published in 2018 and 2019. Right? So this formula is not normalized, meaning it does not take into consideration the specialization. Okay? So when you want to compare a journal in veterinary science with a journal in business, you can't do that with the journal impact factor. Okay? With the journal citation indicator, this is an article level metric because we calculate the CNCI for each and every article in that journal over the preceding 3 years. Because of this, you can now easily compare between a veterinary science journal and a business journal to see which of those two journals are more impactful. Okay? So now, let me just go into the live platform to show you the journal citation reports. Okay. So to access journal citation reports, if you're on Web of Science, you can easily go to Products and click on Journal Citation Reports. And it'll open up the JCR session for you. Okay, so this is Journal Citation Reports. So first, a few things you can do here. You can either search for the journal's name. So I mentioned about, I think some of you have mentioned about identifying the journal's index in Web of Science. Okay, you can type in the journal's name. So let's say I have International Journal of Hydrogen. Okay, so if this was the journal I'm looking for, it appears here. And I want to click on one result. Okay. This shows me that, yes, this journal is indexed in Web of Science, it is indexed in Journal Citation Reports, and under the categories, it is indexed in Energy and Fuels, SCIE, Electrochemistry, SCIE, Chemistry Physical, SCIE. So when you see SCIE, what does this mean? It means that this journal has a journal impact factor because it is in SCIE. So if you want to know more details about this journal, just click on this journal's name. And you can now see details about the journal. Okay, so you can see things like the publisher details, publication frequency, okay, the journal's impact factor over time, 5 years, the journal impact factor contributing items. So if you have Web of Science, you can now also easily link out to the article in Web of Science. Okay, so this becomes a very good reading list to refer to. Now for the new indicator, journal citation indicator, you can see this here. So this particular journal is currently at 0.86. Now you would see that quite a number of journals that are in Q1 and Q2, some of them still fall below 1 in terms of JCI. Okay, the reason is because this is a brand new indicator. We understood that for journal impact factor, there are some challenges in comparison. So now that we have this new indicator, a lot of these journals will now want to start improving and making sure that they are getting enough citations across not just some of their impactful articles, but actually all of their articles, right? So that would then help to improve the quality of that journal. Now this, as you scroll down this page, the journal profile page for the journal, you can see things like open access content. You can also look at the journal impact factor in terms of ranking. So earlier on, you were talking about Q1 to Q4. So one thing I wanted to clarify and make sure that you understand is that now that we have a new indicator called journal citation indicator, there are two quartiles. Okay, there are two quartiles. One is for journal impact factor. Okay, so this journal is a Q2 journal based on journal impact factor. If you scroll down, you can see journal citation indicator. And based on journal citation indicator, this is also a Q2 journal. All right. But sometimes you might see that the JCI shows that it's Q1, but the JIF quartile is a Q2. Now, just don't be confused. Most of the research institutes and the universities in Malaysia are still using the journal impact factor quartile as a means of differentiating the journals. So always refer to JIF quartile when they are talking about Q1 to Q4 for now. Okay? Until the day when it becomes more specific where they want to recognize the journal citation indicator. Okay. Now you can also see things like the cited half-life, citing half-life, and then also other metrics available. So there are definitions here where you can refer to. Contributions by organizations and by country can be also quite useful. So you are able to see where the content is coming from. So from a perspective of a researcher, if you are publishing from Malaysia, are there enough Southeast Asian countries in this list? If it's more US, Europe kind of countries, then perhaps that tells you that they are looking more for the Europe, US perspective. Okay? So if you are not going to contribute to that perspective, perhaps this might not be the most suitable journal. Okay? So we have the other metrics here that you can refer to. Right? So every journal indexed in Web of Science or Journal Citation Reports will have this journal profile page. You can export this page for your own reference or even add this to your favorites. So if you like this journal, you want to add this to your favorites list, you can do so right here. Okay? Now that is on finding a journal. What about browsing for a journal in a specific category? Okay, so if you can click on browse categories, if you just want a list of all the journals in, say, a specific subject area, you can do so by browse categories. Okay, so if you are in, let's see, let's say you are in economics and business, you want to see the journals in, say, business finance, and you can click on this business finance. Okay. Then you would see two lists here. So there's an ESCI and there's a SSCI. If you only want to find the list of journals that have a journal impact factor, then you would go for this list of 110. Okay? This list of 111 are the journals that are in ESCI, meaning they are quality journals, but they currently do not have a journal impact factor. So if you only want those that have a journal impact factor, click on this one, which is 110 SSCI. So click on 110. Okay, Then this will give you the list of 110 journals in business finance. Okay. Now, by default, you would be looking at this list of journals based on these indicators. So this is the default view. You have total citations, journal impact factor quartile, journal citation indicator. Okay. If you want to customize these indicators to include those that I've mentioned, you can do so by clicking Customize and selecting things like Immediacy Index, Cited Half-Life, percentage of articles in citable items, and then you apply. Okay. Once you do that, you can also save this as your own view. Okay. So I'm going to show you my view to highlight all the important indicators. Okay, so now these are the indicators that are useful for you to refer to. Okay, number one, of course, is the journal impact factor. So you can sort this list based on journal impact factor if you want. Okay, then you will have all the Q1s at the top, right? Then you have your immediacy index, which is here. Okay, Forbes is a special case. Forbes is like a magazine. So most of the time, it might not have the details like the citation counts and so on, but it's considered a Q1 journal impact factor journal. Okay. Then for the others, like Journal of Finance, for example, you can see here, it has a 3.4 JCI. It means that it is performing 3.4 times better than the other journals in this same category. Okay. And the immediacy index is immediately visible. This other indicator here, I did not explain in detail. So this percentage of articles in citable items is a calculation of, as its name suggests, the percentage of the articles. Okay, so citable items are articles plus reviews. So articles plus reviews will give you citable items. So when the percentage of articles is 100%, what does this mean? It means that this journal only publishes articles. So if you're writing a review paper, you do not send your review article here because they do not publish reviews. Okay, so if you send it here, then you're going to be rejected. All right, so something to take note of. Take a look at this particular indicator. All right. Then some of you will be asking, how can I use the JCI to compare between different journals? Okay, let's say, for example, this one. So Journal of Accounting Research is a Q1 journal, impact factor of 4.364. Let's take a look at this one. This particular impact factor is higher, yeah, 5.179. Okay, but comparing in terms of JCI, this journal has more impact. It is 2.08, whereas this is 1.84. Okay. So now with this new indicator, it gives you an opportunity to compare within the quartile, which are those journals that have a better performance. Okay. All right. We've covered quite a lot today, so I'm not going to bog you down with further details and numbers. Okay, but just wanted to share with you some additional features. So you can export this list for your own reference. So you can click on export. You can export this into CSV. Just take note, there is an export limit of the first 600 only. So that means if your list here has 601, then you will be missing one. Okay, so just make sure that the filter allows you to just filter it down to 600 or less. Okay. Now, from an administrator standpoint, sometimes you want to look at the top 10% journals. So you can use the filters here to filter this down to percentile. So you have the JCI or JIF percentile. So for the percentile, if you want the top 10%, so you would take 90 to 100 as your percentile, and then you apply. And this would be your top 10% journals with a journal impact factor from journal citation reports. Okay. If you want to remove any of these filters, you can just click on the X and that would remove that particular filter. Okay. So earlier on in your questions, you had a question on finding publishers by country. Okay, you can actually go through here and reset. So this gives you the full list of 21,000 journals, and you can now start to apply some of these filters. So let's click on filters, and you can filter this by country. So this is a filter based on the journals. So which countries are the journals published from? So if it's a Malaysia journal, okay, let's choose Malaysia, and then you apply. Okay, so these are Malaysia's journals. There are 79 journals currently on Journal Citation Reports. Okay, and then now for those journals that currently do not have a journal impact factor, okay, let's do this. Okay, so for those journals that currently do not have a journal impact factor like this one, you are still now able to see its performance based on JCI. Okay. Okay, and that's about it. If you want to compare any of the journals, we currently have an opportunity for you to just select those two journals and compare. Okay, so if you click on compare, it puts these two journals side by side, and you can compare based on the various metrics. Okay, if you want to add them to your favorites, you can do so by just clicking on the heart logo next to each of the journals, and then it will be added to your favorites. Right? If you need further help, again, we have a resource center. If there's any new product updates, it will be listed here. If you need help, just contact us from this link and provide feedback for future enhancements. Okay. And that's it. We have covered quite a lot. It was a very long session. I hope it has helped all of you so far. And if there are any parts that you have missed or perhaps I've lost you halfway, you can always review the recordings that will be shared with all of you. And let's see whether there's any more questions from the audience. Are there any questions? I think some of you can actually, can they unmute themselves to ask or no? Okay, no questions? Then let me see. Oh, there's one. Okay. Oh, yes. Journals that have been removed. Sorry, I missed that. So journals that have been removed. Okay, you can access this from the help section. So if you click on this, there is a help. Go to the help guide. Okay, so this is from JCR, yeah? So there's a help guide and there's a title suppression. So on the left here, there's title suppression. And this would be the list of titles suppressed this year. And if you want the previous years, that will be here. Okay, and then the reasons will be listed here as well. There will be journals that have been issued letters of editorial expressions of concern. So you can click on this and you would see that they have been issued warnings, and you have to be careful when you want to send your manuscripts to these journals. Okay, they may not have been delisted yet, but there's a risk. Okay, so these two are the lists that you should be referring to. Okay, there's a question on how frequent WAS update the list of journal index, and is there any discontinued journal that I can refer? So the discontinued journals can be viewed here on the title suppressions. The titles are updated on an annual basis in June. So every year in June, we will release the new journal citation reports, and that's when the details of those new journals will be included in JCR. Okay. If you want to do a more quick search on the journals, you can also refer to our master journal list. So we have a master journal list that is a free platform to refer to. So on the master journal list, this gives you real time all the journals that are currently indexed in Web of Science. Okay. Sometimes when you're searching on master journal list, these journals may not be on journal citation reports yet because they have been newly indexed in Web of Science. So it might take the the next report before they are given a profile page on Journal Citation Reports. Okay, so I hope that answers your question. Okay, if there's no further questions, I think I'll hand this back to the host, and then we can end a very long day. All right, so thank you very much, everyone, and I hope to see you again next time.